Any luck, Diane?
There's one person in the waiting room that's just named Daniel. It could be him, but we may as well. We got 46 people in the waiting room, and he could be one of those. And it just may be.
All right, yeah, we got to start anyway, so.
Okay. So I'm going to open up the waiting room, and we are recording.
And you're on Facebook. So it says.
Alex, is he in? Can Alex hear me?
We're going to find out a roll call.
Okay, he should be getting in.
We're giving everybody a minute to come on live on the Zoom. In a minute, we will get started. Welcome to the Churchill Borough Planning Commission meeting for February 3rd, 2021. You'll see on the screen, Alex is sharing tonight's agenda with you. We do have a quorum with the members of the Planning Commission. So with that, I will get started. Welcome, everyone. The first matter is we will call to order. We'll call members of the Planning Commission. Mike Moida is here.
Hello.
Diane Law. Richard Kelly is here. Daniel, are you here? I'm not sure.
He might need to unmute himself. When people come into the room, they're muted, and we'd like them to remain that way until called upon by the chair.
There you go. Sorry, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Been doing this almost a year and I still forget to unmute most of the time.
You're not alone.
All right. So with that call to order, we have everybody from the Planning Commission here. For the first matter is we would like to consider accepting the minute meetings from the January 6th meeting of the Planning Commission. And these were previously circulated, posted, and are there any changes from the folks in the Planning Commission?
No.
I had a couple of nits and gnats, mostly typographical errors, but other than that, nothing substantive. So I have no changes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting, please?
So moved.
Moved by Richard Kelly, second by anybody?
I'll second them.
Okay, thanks, Mike. The next item up for discussion is the discussion that was tabled last meeting.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm not sure you voted on that after the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Everybody in favor of adopting the prior minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Sorry about that, Gavin. Thank you. One other thing for consideration, just so people know, Diane Law, although she is a member of the Planning Commission, will not be commenting or questioning tonight in that she's also a member of council. So she is listening in for her pleasure. All right, so moving on. The first item is the application for land development approval and conditional use from Churchill Creek, the Churchill Creek Group regarding the Westinghouse redevelopment project and the change of zoning on the property located off of Beulah Road. It's my understanding that we're going to have a short presentation from Hillwood. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I just need to know from Hillwood who will be sharing their screen this evening.
Hey, Alex, this is Tim. I'll be sharing my screen.
Okay, give me a moment to give you that permission in one moment. Here.
Okay, for all of you who don't know, Tim Pudwell is from Hillwood Development, and he gave the presentation last meeting as well.
So go ahead, Tim. I've switched the co-host over to you, and in a minute, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Did that pop up for you?
Yes.
Good deal.
Madam Chair, hi, this is Leif Metz. I represent Hillwood, and I'll just make a little intro and then turn it back over to Tim. So thank you for having us back here to the Planning Commission and the Borough. We appreciate it very much. And in the last meeting, Planning Commission tabled the conditional use application and the land development plan application that we had submitted for further discussion this month. And I'll just preview this by saying that we're anticipating at the conclusion of tonight's meeting that the borough may again table both applications just to set the stage. One of the things that we heard loud and clear in the last meeting and that we have understood throughout our interactions with the borough is just what a significant impact that this project will have on the borough and its residents. And Hillwood prides itself on making communities better and on listening to feedback from the community and trying to incorporate that into their development plans. And so we just wanted to start tonight by mentioning several really significant moves that Hillwood is making on the project to try to address some of the feedback that we've received so far from the community. The first thing is that the facility that we have been proposing was approximately 830,000 square feet in the footprint of the building and 4.5 stories tall. And in an effort to reduce the impact of the project on the community, Hillwood is going to reduce the size of the building's footprint by about 25%. So it will be reduced from about 830,000 square feet down to roughly 630,000 square feet. And there'll be a corresponding reduction in the amount of traffic that is generated from the project. So we're hopeful that Planning Commission and the residents will accept that gesture in the spirit we intend, which is as a concession to try to reduce the project impact on the community. And there are a couple of additional things that follow that initial move. One is, one of the main traffic improvements that we have been discussing is at the intersection of Beulah Road and William Penn Highway. And what Hillwood and its engineers had proposed was to replace the traffic signal that's there now with a traffic circle, a 2-lane roundabout. And while we and our consultants think that approach works, we understand that it's caused a certain amount of concern with the borough and the residents because it's quite different, and there were concerns about how the traffic can circulate safely and efficiently around that circle and what effects it might have on the intersection with McCready Road, people who live up there, and on Beulah Church. And those are all things that we care about and want to be sensitive to. So the next meaningful change that we've made in our proposal is that we're going to eliminate the roundabout. And instead, we're just going to have a conventional intersection much like what's there today. So it'll continue to be a signalized intersection. And instead of the roundabout, we're proposing to add some additional turning lanes to address the additional traffic that will be generated by the development. So that's the meaningful change. The third is in the prior site plan that we showed last time and talked about. One of the features was a 3-story parking garage, and there were a number of questions about that, where it was located, how it would look from the parkway, whether it was needed, whether the parking would be screened, there would be parking on the roof. So we appreciated that feedback. And so one of the other changes that we're making is to eliminate that parking structure altogether. So there won't be any above grade parking garage. Instead, all the parking will be at grade. And on the eastern side of the site, there will be some number of parking spaces below grade, but there won't be any above grade parking structure on the site. So we offer those to try to respond to some of the feedback from the community. In the last planning commission meeting, we also received comments from the borough's engineers at Gateway on a number of the studies that we have. And we had initially intended at this meeting, before this meeting, to have submitted revised versions of all of those studies for the borough's engineers to review. Because we've made this change and are now significantly reducing the size of the building, all of those studies need to be redone. So they're not done yet, and we communicated that to the borough prior to the meeting. So we don't have those revised studies done yet, because they all need to be essentially done. So we're working on those now, and we'll submit those for a future planning commission meeting as soon as they're ready. So that's one reason I mentioned we're anticipating tonight that planning commission will table these 2 applications, because we're still in the process of redoing those 2 studies. Another element of feedback that we received in the last meeting was sort of a request to see more rendering, what the building will look like, what the site will look like, how the landscaping will look, on day 1 when it's planted, and how that will evolve over time. And also on the traffic, how the traffic will work and what it will look like. And so that's what we wanted to focus on in tonight's meeting, is to show the revised site plan showing the smaller building footprint, to show renderings of a number of the mitigation measures that we're taking on the site. So for example, more detail about the stormwater management facilities, about the sound walls, about the retaining walls. And then also we have our traffic engineer, Chris Prisk, who's on, will share some simulations of the traffic. So it's basically like an animation showing the William Penn and Beulah Road intersection, and comparing how it functions today compared to how it will function after this reduced size facility is built and the turning lanes are added. So that's the main thing that we wanted to focus on today, to try to help the commission and the residents have a better feel for the kind of look and the functioning of the facility once it's built at this smaller scale. And the last thing we would like to do tonight, time permitting, is that there were a number of questions that were posed in the January meeting, and some of those we were able to answer at the time. Others we needed to step back and investigate further and report back. So once we've gone through the presentation, we'd also like to respond to those questions. They're important and both to you and to us. And then after we've done that, then open it up to the planning commission for kind of questions and answers, and certainly to public comment. So that's how we're organizing our presentation tonight. We thank you again for being with us, and I'll turn it over to Tim Pudwell with Hillwood.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tim.
All right. Leif, thanks for setting the tone for tonight's meeting. And I really just want to take a minute here to for the folks that haven't been part of our presentations previously, just to introduce myself, the Hillwood team, the local consultants we've been working with on this project, and just kind of expand a little bit more on the revised site plan that Leif touched on. But the bulk of our presentation tonight is going to be led by the Langen team to really expand on the items that Leif mentioned. So, you know, a little bit about Hillwood and our team is that it all starts with our leadership, which is Gary Frederick and Michael Alderman. These guys have combined 40 years of commercial real estate experience. And Gary in particular has been working in the Northeast since 2002. My role as development director is I lead the day-to-day efforts for the development team. I come with over 15 years of construction and development experience, with the last 6 years really focusing on logistics development throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. Most recently, just completed a 1 million square foot development in Findlay Township this past August. And our construction team internally is led by Jim Whitehead, who runs the Northeast region. And alongside him is Dwight Lewis, who manages pre-construction activity for all the Northeast. And then additionally, as most of you know, we have Langen Engineering on board. They are handling all of our engineering services and traffic services. And then Leif Metz with Buchanan Ingersoll as our local counsel. Just to touch on a couple of the key local experts that we've been talking with on a pretty regular basis. Senator Jay Costa, County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, Senator Casey, Senator Toomey, Governor Tom Wolf. We've spoken with the Woodland Hills School District, the Port Authority, the Blackridge Civic Association, Allegheny County Economic Development, Lance Chimka, and the Allegheny Fayette Labor Council on multiple occasions. What we're here tonight to talk about is the opportunity in Churchill at the former Westinghouse Research Facility site. And to jump right into it, just put together a quick slide here. What I really wanted this to do is start off by giving a side-by-side comparison of what we've been presenting in the, up until this point, which was considered a large facility, G plus 4.5 sortation center. And what we're proposing tonight is what we switched to is the medium facility. And what that means is that the facility it serves the exact same function. It's going to do the same thing inside of it as the previous version we were showing. But the big difference is, we feel that the medium facility fits the site much better, and I believe it'll work with the community much better. Just some high level stats between the two is the building square footage is reduced by 188,000 square feet, which when you convert that to acres, you're just about a little over 4 acres less building coverage on the site. Car parking, not much changes there. It reduces by about 16 spots. But the big change in terms of parking is, as Leif mentioned, the above ground parking structure that we were previously proposing. In the previous iteration of this building, we had a 3-level parking structure. With this facility, we can eliminate going above ground, have everything surface level, and have about 200 car spots underground. Loading docks, we reduced the loading docks by about 13. We go from 62 to 49. And our trailer parking requirement reduces from 378 down to 325. So pick reduction of 53 trailer parking stalls. At this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Chris Westbrook with Langen, and he's going to dive deeper into this medium facility that we're talking about here tonight.
Hey, thanks, Tim. If you want to flip to the next slide. So this is the overall view that was from the side-by-side that you just had up. This is the revised latest layout with the smaller building footprint and reduced number of parking spaces. Obviously, that then opens up more of the site for open space. And highlighted in yellow One of the questions that has come up is what part of the site is going to be a public roadway. Highlighted in yellow on this overall plan at the top of the page is the connection from the Parkway to Beulah Road on the north side of the site. So that is what is proposed as a public right-of-way. So I'll let you kind of take that in for a little bit and look at the rendering. And then Tim, when you're ready, if you want to flip to the next slide. Next, we'll be going through 5 different rendering views. And these have all been updated based on the latest layout to coincide with the landscaping and what will be presented in the engineering plans. So the first view is from the northwest. And we will have 4 different views for each of these, or 4 different time periods. We'll start with an existing, and then we'll show time of planting, 5 years and 10 years. So existing view. And the next one. This is at time of planting. The building in the is approximately, you're seeing is approximately 3 football fields away. So it's almost 1,000 feet from the Parkway. And you're seeing the car parking lot in front. And Tim just clicked from time of planting to 5 years. And the next view is at 10 years. So this shows the different time periods, and then this shows them all together. So I'll let this stay up for a minute so you can look and see from the upper left to the lower right how it transitions from existing through construction and then into the near future. Okay. And the next view is from the northeast, from the north. Looking back into the site. So this is from the Parkway. As the Parkway starts to approach Beulah Road, this is looking out. This would be looking out the passenger side as you're heading out of the city. So you see the top of the building, and then you see the property line is where that fence is that's currently there. And this is the planning at 5 years and then 10 years. And then there's the montage there of the various time periods. And then the third view, which if you've been on these meetings previously, is a similar view, or it's the same view that we've shown. But again, we've updated based on this particular building orientation, size, building finish, aesthetic, and the parking and driveways for this plan layout, as well as the plants that are shown on this plan view are consistent with what is shown in the rendering. So here's existing former Westinghouse driveway leading up into the site. And here is at the time of planting. So the building that you're seeing here is approximately about 1.5, the nearest point's about 1.5 football fields away for frame of reference. Here's 5 years. And here's 10 years. And then the combination. And then the fourth view is a new view from Beulah Road. So from this view, you have, you're looking as if you are standing on Beulah Road and looking at the hillside or looking up the hillside. So the existing, this is what it looks like. So this picture was taken about a week and a half ago. So leaf off, kind of the worst case scenario where there's no leaves on the trees, and you'll see what you're seeing is the top of the building, right between those pine trees right there, evergreens right there. That's the top of the building that you're seeing from this perspective. So really the proximity, the closeness of that hillside, and the fact that the building is stepped back over I believe about 400 feet, over 1 football field distance back from Beulah Road, means that the perspective you're seeing is that you're seeing just the top of the building peeking through there, because the hill is really blocking most of your view. So that's 10 years after planting. So in this view, this is the existing slope that you're seeing. And again, each of those views you see on the about 1/3 from the right of the page, you see the building poking through in a couple spots. And then the last view is another view we've shown before from the west, looking into the site. In this view, the building that you're seeing is about 3 football fields away. So this is the existing view from the driveway. And then the next view is at the time of planting. And then 5 years and 10 years. And then the combination.
Is that from Greensburg Pike or what?
Okay. And then the next piece we wanted to talk about, what were the retaining walls on site? Because there have been questions, we wanted to show what the latest and greatest plan calls for. So as is being traced right now, there's retaining walls along the east side of the site and along the west side of the site, looping up until we reach Greensburg Pike. So the retaining walls are intended to keep the driveways and parking areas to acceptable slopes for driving and parking for the vehicles. So they're holding back the grade to allow us to reach, again, flatter slopes on site that are safe for travel. So on the east side, and then as far as the aesthetic, we anticipate there'll be modular block walls, similar to what you would see on other similar developments, similar to what you'd even see for landscaping at your home, except the blocks will probably be a little bit larger size, 8 or 12 inch high block, and obviously engineered to maintain the heights that we are talking about on this site. But from an aesthetic standpoint, similar, it would look similar to what you see on the driveways up to the Monroeville Mall or on other commercial developments, similar to what you're seeing here. And then sound barriers, highlighted in orange, again on the east side of the site, around the edge of the facility, around the southwest side, and then along the driveway on the west side of the site, adjacent to the adjoining properties. So the sound barriers we anticipate would be a wood material. We feel that would fit well with the aesthetic that we're going for in the context of where they would be placed. So what you're seeing here is an example from a vendor on what that could look like, whether the and those will be solid, and whether those are slats that go horizontal or vertical. There's several different options for that, but it would be a solid barrier to serve its engineering function. And I think that is it from that side, and I think I will pass it to Carly Davis from my team for the stormwater exhibit, if that is the next slide.
Yeah. Oh, go back.
I'm trying to get back there, Carly. It's just dragging a second.
I mean, not that I wouldn't love to talk about stormwater with those two handsome gentlemen on the screen.
All
All
right,
right,
should be good.
there you go, perfect. So I'm Carly Davis. I work in the Pittsburgh office at Langen. I'm one of the project managers for the project and have been for about the last 6 months. So once we started, starting to present to you guys is when I jumped on board to help out. So talking about the stormwater, we know that a big concern for everyone is the flooding that you see on Beulah and what we're required to do and what we're proposing to do. So when we look at a site of this scale, we really look at it in various different drainage areas. So what you're seeing on the left top corner of your side of the screen is the existing site. And each of those purple areas represent different drainage areas that we analyze for what that peak flow rate is in the 1 year up to the 100-year 24-hour storm event. So we've got 3 different areas that we have designated as our discharge points. You can see those on the bottom of the site, which is really where that stream flows off site, and then 2 different areas on Beulah Road. When we look at the proposed condition, we analyze those same 3 discharge points. But because of the conditions changing, we have various different drainage areas associated with that. So just by the mere fact that we change the drainage areas, we're kind of rerouting the stormwater from where it was going to different portions of the site. So when we do the post-development, because we're in the Turtle Creek watershed, the requirement is actually that we have to take the peak flow rates down to 80% of the existing condition. So just because of where we're located, we're already by law required to reduce it to 80% of what it is. So when we look at this, we're adding impervious area, but we can't increase the flow rate. So the way that we control for that is we do either above ground storage or below grade. The turquoise areas that you see in 3 of the locations, so we've got 2 areas underneath the parking field and 1 area in the truck parking, are underground storage tanks. In reality, they're just very large storm pipes that will collect water and hold it back in those larger storm events. And really even the 1 year to 100, even in the 1 year, we're required to slow it down even more. So they're just large holding tanks essentially. And then we've also have those in series with 3 different stormwater ponds that are also helping to slow that flow rate down. So on the bottom of the screen, what you see is what our peak discharge rates are for the 1 year and 100-year events at each of those discharge locations. And you can see that we actually are reducing all of those flow rates to lower than the 80% requirement that we have. So when we look at, what's going to happen once we route the stormwater to these tanks, the water gets held back behind the walls in the tanks and then slowly released to the Beulah system and to the Sawmill Run, or to the tributary to Sawmill Run. There's much more technical pieces that go into this, as we've, as other people have mentioned, in terms of land cover, whether it's a meadow or whether it's wooded area, but all of that is taken into account in our calculations. So we think that, this design by doing underground tanks and above ground is really helping to reduce those storm events that you guys are seeing. And I'm sure there'll be questions, and what we can, I'm happy to answer any questions on the stormwater when we get to that portion.
Thank you, Carly.
All right, thanks, Carly. We're gonna flip over to Chris Prisk from Langen, who leads a traffic effort. Bear with me 1 second here. And my screen should have switched to a slide that has 2027 no build simulation on it. So holler if you don't see it. And
You don't have
Chris,
to
you
start it right away.
wanna take over?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Put this in
but
presentation mode.
do slideshow and then present it, but don't start it yet, and I'll give a little introduction.
All right.
While Tim's taking care of that, I guess I just wanted to follow up on a few of the comments that Leif mentioned. Again, to give you context, and we shared this at previous meetings, the existing Westinghouse site, we estimated was generating more traffic than the proposed facility that we were previously contemplating. And now with this shift to a smaller facility, it's going to be even less traffic than that. One thing I want to make sure is clear is, we were able to come up with proposed improvements that would adequately address the traffic impacts from the larger facility. So that the shift to a smaller facility wasn't necessitated by a need traffic-wise to do that, but the smaller facility will only make traffic operations better because it's going to be less traffic that would be out there. And the calculations are showing that it's a little bit over 100 less trips during the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour with this new facility than the previous facility we were looking at. And then one other quick thing was, at this intersection of William Penn and Beulah, which was getting a lot of attention, both the dual lane roundabout and this signalized option with additional turn lanes adequately address the traffic impacts. It was our thought that the dual lane roundabout would be the preference. And, as it turned out, there was, different feedback here or there that we were receiving. And so it just seemed like it was more favorable to move forward with the signalized option. But again, it wasn't that the dual lane roundabout couldn't work. There was just maybe some added complications from it. So on the screen, this is a simulation of traffic analysis software that we use. So we input various lanes, the traffic control at the intersections, myriad of specific inputs like the grade and the speed limit and the lane widths, and we put in traffic volumes and timings to represent what the traffic conditions are in the field. And then you can take those analyses, and instead of just having printout results of how things are operating, you can actually convert it into a simulation like this. So on the left side of the screen is a simulation that represents 2027, which is 6 years out in the future now, during the PM peak hour, and it's from 4:30 to 5 o'clock, so it's a 30-minute window, but we sped it up for you so you can kind of get through 30 minutes in about 3 minutes. So it's definitely not real time. So if you think that cars are traveling abnormally fast, they are on purpose. But it's supposed to represent where there's traffic congestion or where there's kind of sticking points. So the left side of the screen is if nothing ever happens, no development's built, It's just the existing conditions, existing conditions in the future 6 years from now. The right side of the screen shows 2027 build, but it's with the improvements from, and you should be able to run them both at the same time, Tim. With the improvements from the signalized intersection. So if you look on the left side of William Penn and Beulah, we're adding a right turn lane. So instead of just 2 lanes up to that approach, there's a right turn lane. And then if you look on the northbound approach of William Penn and Beulah, we kind of peeled off a little bit of a right turn lane as well. So there's an additional turn lane there. And then a more significant change is just changing the actual signal phasing at that intersection. So, existing, it's split phased. In the proposed condition, it would have these additional turn lanes and wouldn't be split phased. And so you're going to have similar operations in that it's a traffic signal as opposed to a dual lane roundabout. But you can start to see, some of the improvements that the additional lanes provide capacity-wise, as well as the changing of the signal phasing. And so some of the things that kind of stood out to us was the eastbound approach on William Penn, which is the left side of that intersection there. If you look at the no build condition, you can kind of see that the queues are backing up kind of outside of the screen purview. Whereas in the build with improvement condition, those queues are kind of able to get processed during the cycle length, and so there isn't that additional backup. Similarly, I think one of the major issues that you guys were bringing to our attention was the queuing and the difficulty that it is to get out from McCready to Beulah Road. And so you see on the left side again, which was kind of represent the existing condition, how it's really troublesome for McCready to find a gap to turn left because southbound traffic spills back through the intersection. And so they have to wait for traffic to be stopped and maybe 1 or 2 cars can kind of sneak out. Whereas on the right side, because you've added capacity and you improved William Penn and Beulah, the southbound queues can get processed faster. Additionally, we coded in what would amount to signage and pavement marking striping that would kind of reinforce not to block McCready. Again, to just make sure that, certain vehicles don't mistakenly spill back and block McCready. And so McCready's able to exit better. There's also a little bit more queuing northbound on Beulah that you'll see, which is just kind of a function of the signal timings, as well as not having that additional little slip right turn lane. So we were hoping to try to illustrate, how conditions are now and how these improvements not only address existing conditions, but address the additional traffic that's going to be anticipated with the proposed facility. And I don't know if you want to let it run a little bit more or if that's enough of a talking point, Tim.
Yeah, no, Chris, that was good. Thanks. I'm sure we'll have questions on traffic that we can address when we get to that point of the meeting tonight. At this point, if we have the time, we would like the opportunity to provide comment on some of the questions we took at the last council meeting commission meeting. If that's all right with you, I'll turn it back over to Leif, and we'd like to respond to the comments.
Sure, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Matt. So we took the comments from the January meeting and they roughly fell into 5 groups. So there were some questions about the civil work on the site related to primarily to stormwater. There are some landscaping questions, some questions about sound, air quality, and traffic. So those are the 5 categories. So we'll just go through those one at a time. So Chris Westbrook and Carly Davis at Langen are going to start in the civil engineering question.
Hi, everyone. It's Carly again. So there are 5 questions that were outstanding. Will the amount of impervious surface be increased or decreased compared to the existing? The answer to that is yes, we will be increasing the impervious area. And generally speaking, with that does increase the peak flow rates. But again, by law, we're required to reduce it to 80% of the existing, regardless of the addition of the impervious area. So yes, we are adding more pavement, bigger building, but we're decreasing the flow rate at which the water leaves the site via the underground stormwater tanks and above ground stormwater ponds. This next question, can the height of the retaining walls be reduced? No, the retaining walls are there because of the site topography and the amount of flat area that we need to support the building. A comparable size of those retaining walls, like Chris had mentioned earlier, is the retaining wall at the Monroeville Mall. Will a retaining wall be needed on the southwest side of the site? Yes, it is. We kind of showed that on the site plan earlier, where will there be stormwater management on the eastern side of the site? Yes, there will be catch basins on the east side of the site. That's going to route water back into the site to reduce the amount or the rate of the water draining to Beulah Road. And electric power, we are talking with Duquesne Light for preliminary designs right now, but we are anticipating that the power will be coming from Beulah Road via an underground system. So we don't anticipate any poles or above overhead wires feeding the site. And the next question is related to landscaping. So I think Leif, you've got those.
Yeah, thank you, Carly. So there were 6 outstanding questions about the landscaping and the open space. The first one was whether we're going to be planting saplings or mature trees. And Chris Westbrook was showing earlier the time lapse of how the planting looks on day 1 and how it matures over 5 and 10 years. So just in the big picture, all the landscaping that we do is going to be done to borough standards. And one of the documents that we'll enter into with the borough is going to be a landscape plan. So we'll comply with all of the borough's requirements. But our intention is to plant saplings. And the reason for that is, in our experience, saplings do better when they're transplanted than mature trees do. It's quite hard on trees when you move them from one location to another, and that shock is more profound with mature trees, and so they wither more or they die more often than saplings. So that's our plan, is to plant saplings. The second question was about who would be paying for the ongoing maintenance of all the landscaping on site. Made that, hey, it's great to plant all this stuff, but somebody has to pay to make sure it continues to thrive and to look nice. And so the short answer to that question is that our tenant, Amazon, will be responsible to pay for that. So Amazon will have a professional property manager that handles all aspects of their site. So the landscaping and snow and ice removal and maintenance of their building and of the grounds. So that will all be done by Amazon at their own expense. There were a couple of questions in the last meeting. We mentioned that on the southern portion of the site that there are approximately 20 acres that we plan to leave as undisturbed open space. So there were a few questions about that. The first one was whether it would be possible to publicly dedicate that space to the borough to be used for a public park or in some similar way. And so that's a conversation that we look forward to having with the borough about the best way to preserve that open space. Earlier today, we received a letter from the borough's kind of environmental and landscaping consultants at Pashick. And the suggestion that they made was to kind of preserve that space through a conservation easement. That's our initial instinct as well. And so that's a conversation that we'll continue to have with the borough, but we're certainly open to doing something official and binding to preserve that space. The next question that was asked was whether that 20-acre space that we're talking about was the area that the borough in its zoning code designated for fracking. And the answer is basically is yes. Mr. Solicitor, please correct me if I have this wrong, but as we understand it, the borough's zoning code permits oil and gas development only in the C1 zoning district as a conditional use. And the only property in the borough that's zoned C1 is this Westinghouse site. So the entire site, not just that 20-acre piece, is what the borough has designated as for oil and gas development as a conditional use. The next question about that 20 acres of open space is whether we would be planning to plant trees there. So I know there's been concern about the number of trees that will be lost and the number of trees that will be replacing those. So that's a good question and something we'll certainly think about, whether that 20 acres is just going to be left in its current existing kind of native state, or whether we want to plant more trees there. So that'll be fleshed out further in the landscaping plan that we enter into with the borough. But I just did want to mention that our current plan calls for 751 new trees to be planted on the site. The last question was whether there's going to be any kind of a public walking trail around the site, similar to what you might find in the RIDC office park in O'Hara Township. And there's not going to be something exactly like that. In the RIDC park, you have a bunch of different buildings owned by different people. And so there are, sidewalks so people can walk between one building and the next. Whereas this is just, a single building occupied by one tenant. But along the public road that Chris Westbrook was highlighting earlier on the northern part of the site from the slip ramp off of the Greensburg Pike exit from the Parkway all the way over to Beulah Road. Along that public road, certainly from Beulah Road up to the building entrance, that's all going to have a sidewalk and be publicly accessible. So that is the public walking area that is contemplated at the moment. Those are the landscaping questions that we had. The next group of questions are about the sound study, and Chris Westbrook will field those.
Thanks. The first question regarding sound was, could trees be used for noise reduction rather than sound barriers? And the answer to that is that trees would not really provide the sufficient sound mitigation that we are modeling. So especially in winter when there are no leaves. So really a solid surface, such as was shown earlier, is what's needed to meet the levels that we're studying and reviewing with the borough's sound consultant. Second question is, does sound study address traffic from the slip ramp or the off ramp from the Parkway? And the answer to that is yes, it will. And the third is, will drones be delivering packages from this site to customers? And there are no plans for this to have direct delivery to customers. This is in the middle of the supply chain or distribution chain. So for this facility, packages would leave and go to another delivery facility before going to their final destinations. So there are no deliveries planned directly from this facility to your house. And then Regarding air, last question regarding air quality. How will air quality during construction be addressed? And that is one item that we have added to our study for air quality that will be submitted to the borough for review as well.
Thanks, Chris. So the last group of questions related to traffic, and Chris Prisk is going to take those.
I'm batting cleanup. You guys are almost through. All right, so first question is, there are 2 residences with driveway access from the Greensburg Pike entrance to the site. Will that access still be available? Yes, those 2 private residences will still have access to that connecting road. The site plan showed a parking deck with rooftop parking. Will that be screened? Yes, we were able to eliminate the 3-story parking structure due to the reduction in the building size. So there will not be any elevated parking decks. On the east side of the site, there will be an area of below grade parking with parking above at grade, which I believe Leif already mentioned. Which roads on site will be public? I think we've touched on this a few times. It's that kind of northern paralleling road that comes off the interstate ramp and then goes all the way down to Beulah. This connection was always intended to be the public road piece. The alignment coming off the off-ramp is kind of been tweaked, but that is definitely the public road portion of it. Will on-street parking be lost on Greensburg Pike when lanes are restriped, reoriented? This was a question from Mike, and I got to give Mike kudos. My study was reviewed 5-6 different times from multiple agencies, and nobody brought up on-street parking. So I know you're a rookie right now, but you earned your keep with that comment there. There are certain sections that have signage that allow parking in between the peak hours. So like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. During all of our traffic observations, we have never seen a car parked during those times. I'm not sure if it was something in years past was more prevalently used. It seems like the areas where those on-street parking is quote unquote available, residents also have a driveway with off-street parking. But if the road diet restriping does move forward, the potential for that on-street parking would be eliminated. Next question, will the new road serving the ongoing Westinghouse operations be part of the Hillwood development? And I think Tim can maybe touch on that. Westinghouse is actually handling that construction and permitting separate of our development. And then who is paying for the traffic improvements? And the developer has kindly raised their hand to take care of that. And that's the last question I had.
Thank you, Chris. Madam Chair, that concludes our presentation. We thank you again for the time, and we're happy to hear any questions or comments from planning or from the public.
Megan, you're on mute.
Sorry, like I said, it takes me forever to get used to that. Thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. What we would like to move on to is if there's any comments by the borough engineer, recognizing that the submittals are to be forthcoming related to the updated studies. So Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, at this time, as was stated, no new submission has been provided since our comments were provided prior to the last meeting. At that time, we were requesting additional information, and with the changes that are expected, we would expect significant changes to all the plans and studies that were originally submitted We will perform review once those are received, and we'll submit to the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Dennis, for all of those who do not know, Dennis is with Gateway Engineers, who is retained by the borough to review this application. And any comments from staff at Churchill?
No, and I'm just wondering, Megan, out loud, if we'll still do what we plan to do on the agenda, which is hold all the public comment till after the second development presentation occurs. So people need to be patient with that. That's why we
Yes.
structured the agenda. The thought would be after the second presentation, one speaker may have comment to make on both of them. And we don't anticipate giving people 2 times the talk, which would be 6 minutes, if that makes sense. So people just need to be patient to go through the second presentation, and then they'll make their comments. And Gavin, if that makes sense, or if you would rather us have a group of comments now and then have after the second presentation, the public again make comment.
Mr. Graziani, I'll defer to the Planning Commission on that. I mean, there is something to be said for, kind of dealing with one development at a time and trying to, there may be some folks who really are just interested in this and want to be on their way. But, I certainly understand we're trying to stay efficient as well. So, I guess I defer to the chair on that one, and that's why she gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, I believe we had a rather lengthy presentation, but by the Churchill Creek folks. I don't know that the truck development, how long theirs is going to be or how long we anticipate for that. And as we've also said, we want to limit the comments up to 3 minutes per resident, and then the comments are that comment. It's not a question and answer dialogue. We'll keep track of the comments and hopefully address them in due course through the process of these proceedings. So with that being said, is there, I believe there's a presentation from Trek.
You're going to wait for the comments?
Or do you want to
Yes.
wait? Do you want to have your planning commission, if they have any comments with this applicant at this point?
Okay. Planning Commission, do you have any comments at this point? I have one suggestion. This is the first time that I'm sure many of us have seen some of these renderings. And if at all possible, we'd like to have a copy at the municipal building, perhaps blown up. So if need be, I know with the days of COVID, it's going to be somewhat of a challenge, but if somebody wanted to look at those in a larger form, that they would be available. That's a suggestion I would have. At this time, does anybody on the commission have some comments, questions? I know I have a number of them, but I don't know that I'm ready to talk about them, given that the presentation was just given. So, Richard, do you have anything at this time?
No, I don't have anything at this time. I think we're kind of starting over again. So I think I'll wait and see the new reports and the new comments from the state and from the engineers.
Okay. Diane is not doing it. Mike?
Yeah, I have a few questions, and like Richard mentioned, some of them be more meaningful maybe to discuss once we get some of our engineers' feedback. Chris, thanks for checking on that Greensburg Pike parking. That just something I've driven through by a lot. But another place, and I don't know if any thought's been given. I'm just curious. You're the expert, but the right turn off of Churchill Road onto Beulah is a dedicated yield lane that has a pork chop next to it, and that gets backed up a lot. And I saw that you've extended you've created a new right turn ramp onto the interstate, which looks like it alleviates some of that backup. But what happens is because the there's just a yield at that right turn. Those folks come in and they clog up the intersection, and only a couple of cars can squeeze in there, and then they get stuck with gridlock at the traffic light at peak hours. So I don't know if the pork chop can be trimmed back and maybe we can have 2 lanes cut through there. That might cause other issues, but I just thought I'd throw it out there to see if maybe that was something thought about. And yeah, I'll be curious to see how, I've read about some of PennDOT's concerns about that road coming off of the ramp of the Parkway exit. I'll be curious to see how that gets resolved. I'm sure you're having fun with that. And then the sound barriers, I'm a little surprised about the wood idea. I'm not quite sure how long the wood would last, who's going to maintain it. I know the woodpeckers around here would love that. But I'm a little bit leery of that from a maintenance standpoint. It might look nice for about 5 years, but after that, I'm not so sure. And the last thing, it looked like the renderings maybe did not include the retaining walls and the sound walls. I was looking for them and I couldn't see them in some of the views, and I was just wondering if that was something left out temporarily. That's all.
Daniel, anything from you?
Well, I'm new, so this is my first meeting. I've watched everything and looked at the volume of emails as much as I could. I think a lot of things have been addressed that were addressed or were brought up previously. By the way, the road that goes into the site has a name, and its name is Helen, I believe, from Beulah Road into the Westinghouse site. It's not just like Westinghouse Road. It actually
that road is the property's address is Beulah, and that's actually, though you'll see that on maps, is really not a recognized road as far as emergency management goes. All the buildings for emergency responses are Beulah, and the address for the property, and then the building number.
Yeah. Okay. So the name on that doesn't really matter then. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. It is not a recorded or a recognized map within the county GIS system.
Okay. Not a big deal. I have a couple questions, and I'm not sure if this is relevant. So if it is, just tell me. Will there be any federal or state money involved in the development per se?
Mr. Zito, I would say that that's probably beyond the scope of our review. I mean, we're really reviewing it in light of the borough's ordinances to determine compliance. So I think that probably goes beyond that scope. I mean, if next time around, if the developer wants to address that, they're certainly welcome to. But I think that's probably a little outside.
Okay. And the only thing about the trees was, I think it was said that there were 761 or 71, whatever the number was, 51 new trees. Would it be practical to consider how many trees are being removed so that there being at least this equal amount of trees being replaced? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's not that many trees being removed compared to 751, but I was just thinking that might be a good way of balancing that off.
Good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions as well. The building that abuts the Beulah Road side, how far back from the property line will that building be? Do you know, will it be similar to what's there now? Will it be closer to Beulah Road? You know, what's the buffer zone or the buffer between the road and where the building is?
Westbrook, can you take?
I need about 10 seconds here. I'm just double checking.
Okay.
Nominal distance, so I'm doing it off of a PDF image 400 feet west of Beulah Road. maybe plus or minus a couple feet. So
And what's the current building? Closer or further away?
building, I am not sure right now. We could look that up. I don't have it in front of me.
That would be helpful to know, you know, by scale, if it's closer to Beulah and smaller trees and, you know, because looking up from Beulah, you're looking up the hill, it's hard to see, but obviously you have Old Beulah behind it, and then you have Churchill Road that has a bird's eye view of the building. So having a rendering from perhaps that vantage point might help as well. The other question I have is on the stormwater system. I understand that, you know, essentially there's holding tanks or holding drains or whatever you want to call it. Is that a passive or an active system? For instance, if the property was abandoned, would that continue to work, or does it have to be actively managed? So I guess that's a question for Carly, if she's still on.
The pipes and the ponds would still function. There's not a mechanical or electrical component to it. It functions by gravity.
Okay, so it's a passive system, and it
Passive,
does not
yes.
need to necessarily
Correct. Yep.
be operated. Okay.
Sorry, yeah, the pipes that are on site right now and the existing pond would all function as they are today.
Okay. And the road that comes, that will be part of Churchill, coming through down by the Parkway, and maybe this is, that will be rededicated, once construction's completed, that will be dedicated to Churchill, is that correct? And then subject to Churchill's maintenance?
Yeah, the public road would be dedicated to the borough. I think there's a little discussion matter as to where PennDOT's ownership of the interstate ramp would stop and the public road would start. But Dennis said he's all over that.
And again, that is needed, Chris, to, in order to get that off ramp, because it has to, the off ramp on the interstate has to be to a public road.
Correct, yeah. PennDOT was very adamant that any kind of off-ramp connection had to be to a local road. And something with a rendering they saw kind of got them spooked, Mike. And so that's why they were kind of questioning that. But the intent has always been that it's going to go to a local road. We fully understand that.
So at one time on that road, truck traffic will stop, but then it can be used for pedestrian or bike traffic if needed or desired, considering it'll have a sidewalk.
The PennDOT portion would have pedestrian and bicycle restrictions, but then the borough portion would have pedestrian and bicycle access.
Okay. Okay, Planning Commission, any other questions, issues on the Hillwood project? Engineers, staff, are we good? Okay, then we're going to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the Churchill Senior Community application for a conditional use approval. And a small presentation, I guess, by Trek Development Group.
Yes, hi. Alex, should I just jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, John. And who again, Kevin will be, make him co-host, correct?
Yeah, Kevin Wagstaff, yes, our architect.
One moment, please. Let me get that now.
So I'm John Janaki. I'm with Trek Development Group. I'm the Executive Vice President of Trek. I'm going to give just a real brief overview, try to do this whole thing in 15 minutes. So I'll ask my team to keep it brief. So I'll do that as well. What we're proposing is a 40-unit senior cottage community. It's a 62 plus community, so everybody that lives in this property will have to be 62 years of age or older. It is a low-income housing tax credit project. So low-income housing tax credits is a federal tax credit program that's funded through the federal government and is run through local housing or state housing agencies. So in Pennsylvania, that's the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. The reason we go through this process to try to get funding through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency is that it allows us to keep projects affordable. And that's what this project is that we are proposing. So what that means is, and by the way, the low-income housing tax credit program is extremely competitive. Pennsylvania gets about $25 million a year, and they get about, and it's a competitive process, so they get 150 to 170 applications every year for projects similar to what we're proposing. And they fund 20 to 30 projects every year. So extremely competitive. It's a point scoring system, and we will be competing with the rest of the state for those dollars. The main criteria for having a low-income housing tax credit project or receiving the funding, there's two fundamental aspects to it. One is that in order to live in a low-income housing tax credit property, you have to make below 60% of the area median income. So what that means in Allegheny County is, as a single person, you have to make $33,600 or below, or for a two-person household, $38,400. The other aspect to this is you make a 35-year commitment to PHFA that you will keep it affordable under a restrictive covenant for that time period. So those are the two fundamental aspects of the property. There's a lot to the program. There's lots of other things, but that's what's fundamental. We are proposing, of the 40 units we would like to build, that 34 of those units would be income restricted under that affordability criteria, and 6 would be market rate. There would be no restriction to those 6 units. The rents will range between, for a 1-bedroom, $778 a month with all utilities included, to around $1,000 a month for a 2-bedroom with all utilities included. The market rate units that would be in that development would range from $950 to $1,200, so a little bit more for the market rate units. This is not a subsidized program. There's no rent subsidy attached to this. There's no Section 8 attached to this. That's a question we get often. The people that live in these communities have to pay their own rent. And as you could tell, the rents they're not inexpensive or cheap, but they are affordable. That is, if we had to go out and borrow money rather than have these tax credits that we could sell and create equity for a project, the rents would have to be $1,800 to $2,500 a month to make the numbers work. So this keeps rents affordable for seniors on Social Security with small pensions. That's kind of the intention of the program. So as I said, we have 40 units proposed, 30 1-bedroom units and 10 2-bedroom units. This is a approximately $13 million project. 11 million of those dollars would come from the sale of these low-income housing tax credits. So they fund a big portion of the project. We would propose a $500,000 approximately in conventional debt, and we have asked the county through the county home program for $1.5 million to help support this project. Those would be the funding sources, the proposed funding sources. We would also have a supportive service program at the site. So you'll see on the plans, we're proposing a small community building where we would have health and wellness programming for the seniors. So we would have somebody on staff to do that. So TREC will serve as, just to kind of close this out, TREC would serve as the developer for this project. The general partner owner for the project is also the property manager. So we're a local development company, so there's always somebody local that the municipality would always have somebody to talk to if there's some issue or problem with the property. We are basically 2 years away from shoveling any dirt or starting a project, so we're way ahead of the time period when we would actually start constructing the project, because we have to go through a competitive process, submit our application, get approvals, do lots of things to get to a closing. And it's about a 2-year process from today, assuming we would get the funding that we're after. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to our architect, Kevin Wagstaff, to show you some of the site planning and talk more about the specifics of the property.
Okay. Thank you.
Alex, do you want to let me share my screen?
You have that permission to do that now. You should see share screen somewhere on there.
Oh, shoot.
Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to share it on my computer.
So you're coming in on your device.
A user called just Kevin. That might be me.
Yeah, I'll find that user and I will make that person a co-host. Let me first co-host you.
Yeah, I use my iPad for the camera and microphone, but
very sophisticated. Just give me a moment to find that and we'll get that going. Thank you. And what is the tablet label?
I think it's just going to be Kevin, just single name.
Yeah, I don't see a tablet named that. I'll keep scrolling here. I've got about 60 participants in the room, so I've got to figure out who is. Apologize for that.
Yeah, I do see a Kevin.
Okay.
So he's there.
I see a Kevin. I see a Ken. And I see Krista, Kyle, Kim, Karen.
Well, if you want to just bring it up, that's fine as well.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. And then you'll just tell me when to flip.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hopefully the view will come out. Let me try to work on my look through here.
Okay, this is just an aerial view. The site is the former Schaefer School off of Garden Terrace. It's an aerial view. The sort of buildable area of the site is the relatively level area of the school and its parking lot, drive, and playing field. And it's surrounded that by heavily wooded slopes on 3 sides. Go to the next slide. This just shows the site on a zoning map of Churchill. So it's in the R3 district. The red arrow at the bottom is pointing to the parcel. So you can see a tiny portion of the site is in the R5 as you enter. It's just another aerial view showing kind of the larger context, relationship of the existing residential neighborhoods around the site and the streets. Okay, this is just site plan overlay. So as John said, it's 1-story cottages. They're organized as duplexes. So there are 20 duplexes resulting in 40 houses. And then the bright red building at the entrance is the community building. So it's a very small building, slightly smaller than one of the duplexes. They're roughly the same size and would serve all of the residents of the community. It's intended to be a private drive, but built with the necessary dimensions for fire department access with a turnaround cul-de-sac at the end. Kim Gales will go into more of the site specifics, particularly if you have questions. So I'll talk a little more about the buildings. Okay, you can keep going. So each duplex is, as I said, one story, and it's either a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom. They're kind of mixed together. Each unit has a 1-car garage as well as a drive or apron in front of the garage with enough setback that you could park in the driveway as well. Each unit has a small entrance front porch as well as a rear patio for grilling and that sort of thing. And keep going. Just another view. These are the floor plans. So you can see the 1-car garage at the front and then the porches flanking those. You enter into a living and dining area, kind of a great room sort of approach with the living and dining combined, and then the kitchen open to that space. And then the kitchen in both cases opens onto a patio. The patio is at the rear for the 1-bedrooms and at the side for the 2-bedroom units. The unit on the right is a 2-bedroom. The unit on the left is a 1-bedroom, and they're just combined in various ways to make up the 20 duplex buildings. They each have laundry and a single bath. Okay, you can go to the next one. This is a view of the community building, similar in scale, has a larger front porch. It has some parking right in front of the building, pull-in parking off of the private drive. Keep going. Just another view. So again, very residential in its character and scale. And this is a plan then. So when you come in from the front porch, there's an entry area with 2 offices for management and supportive services, toilet rooms, a wellness room at the end of the little hall there, and then a larger community room for gatherings, events, meetings, that sort of thing, served by a kitchenette. And it opens onto a rear porch, which then opens onto a common green space at the northern side of the site. Okay, this is Kim, I don't know if you're there and want to join in at this point.
Sure, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes,
All
this
yours.
is the slide of the survey we prepared indicating the location of the school with the associated parking. Next slide. This is our current layout. The entrance drive will remain the same off of Garden Terrace. The utilities from gas, water, and electric currently exist off of Garden Terrace. We will be designing and constructing the roadway and all the improvements according to your SALDO and your ordinances. Both sides of the roads will have a sidewalk along with a walking trail that will lead down to Stevendale Road. Next slide. This indicates the location of our proposed sanitary sewer system and the storm sewer system. Both of them will reconnect back into the existing easement off of Stevendale. Now we are proposing a rain garden pond combination to control the stormwater to less than 80% of the pre-development flow, which will require all the approvals through your borough and the county. So a lot of walking trails through our open space. I guess the next slide shows our landscaping. There's a lot of existing buffer from the other residential areas. I'd like to state off of Kingsdale Road, the elevation difference is approximately 40 feet lower than our current site. And off of Thornberry, the residential homes are about 70 feet below our site. We're going to maintain all the existing vegetation and then add additionally about 64 to 70 new landscaping features. I'd also like to say that we submitted a traffic trip generation evaluation from Worcester Engineering. It indicates that basically during any average daily traffic flow is less than what was existed during the school, what was open. Usually it's about 50 less car trips in and out in the AM peak, a little bit more on the peak. And I think that is about it. If anybody on the board has any questions.
So the last speaker we have is our attorney, who will just address any issues related to any of the legal matters related to our submission. So go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, John, and thank you, Commission, for bearing with us. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As John indicated, my name is Kevin McKeegan. I'm with the law firm of Meyer, Unkovic, and Scott here in Pittsburgh. I'd like to especially thank Gavin. He and I have been in very close contact over the past few weeks regarding this project, and I think we've narrowed quite a bit the scope of issues. I'm going to be speaking to the review letter that Gateway Engineers provided to us. It's dated January 18th. It really only raises 3 specific comments, 2 of which kind of fit into the legal category. So I'm going to be addressing those. The third comment related to a landscaping plan, and I think Kim has addressed that during her presentation. So taking the comments, and I'm doing this in reverse order. The last comment was the developer must indicate how the proposed community building is permitted in the multifamily dwelling conditional use. Our position on that is that this zoning district allows multifamily dwellings. It allows them in a variety of configurations, the sort of cottage garden style apartments you have here, and it also allows apartment buildings. And as is typical in most zoning districts throughout Churchill and other municipalities, accessory uses and accessory structures are also allowed in this zoning district. So if you think of a more classic traditional apartment building, almost always those buildings will have on the ground floor a meeting room of some type for the residents. Almost always they will have some type of office for the building management. Basically what's happened here is that the multi-story apartment building has been broken down to these single level cottages. And so the community building functions in the same way that those sort of office and community rooms would function in a multi-story apartment building. As an accessory use, your ordinance does indicate that it can't have a height any greater than 24 feet. None of the buildings, including the community building, are going to be taller than 24 feet. And it has to be incidental and subordinate to the principal use. The combined square footages of the apartments are almost 49,000 square feet. If you add up all 40 of those buildings, it's almost 45,000 square feet. The community building itself is barely 2,000 square feet. So it's roughly 4% of the total buildings proposed for the site. So we think it's clearly incidental and subordinate in that context. And we think it's also a use that would be typical for a multifamily project, however that project was designed. The more important comment, maybe the comment that caused the most consternation for Gavin and I, was that your ordinance requires that for multifamily developments, the project has to have direct access onto a collector street or principal thoroughfare. We researched this requirement. We researched interpretation provisions for Pennsylvania zoning ordinances. And we came to the conclusion that the only way to address this particular requirement in your zoning ordinance is to request a variance from the zoning hearing board. So we are asking you tonight, in terms of your recommendation to the municipality's governing body, and Gavin can guide you on this, for hopefully a favorable recommendation with a condition that that favorable recommendation be subject to obtaining a variance from the zoning hearing board for this this requirement in your zoning code. John didn't say it, but one reason why we're hoping that we can leave tonight with a favorable recommendation is that because of the competitive nature of the financing and obtaining approvals from PHFA, it's important that we get a nod, even a yeah, you still have some work to do kind of nod from the municipality. That gives us points, so to speak, with PHFA. It makes the project more attractive to PHFA as opposed to projects that don't have that nod. So hopefully we've answered, or at least suggested answers to questions. We're happy to answer more. And again, we appreciate your consideration in listening to us and bearing with us through the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much for from the Trek Group. The borough engineer and staff comments at this point. I know Gateway Engineers did do a letter which was just spoken about. Anything else?
No, Kevin did cover each of the items that we had indicated. Again, at this time, all that has been submitted is a conditional use application. A land development application has not been submitted for this project. So we did perform a review based on the conditional use of multifamily dwellings that are permitted in the R3 zoning district. As he mentioned, our three comments. And he addressed each of those today, including that that a variance would be required for the access under the collector street.
Gavin, I'll defer to you. Do they have to come back in front of Planning Commission for the land development approval?
They will need to come back for the land development approval. However, for the conditional use, if the commission does decide to approve it subject to that variance, then they would not have to come back. You could actually take that action tonight rather than tabling it, move that aspect of it forward.
Okay. Any comments by Planning Commission members?
Gavin, what did you just say?
I'm not sure. Was I breaking up or did I just not make any sense?
No, I think I was only half listening. So I was reading something.
Okay. Ms. Harmon asked if the applicant was going to have to come back through as part of the land development process. And I said that yes, after an application for land development is filed, they won't need to come back through. However, the conditional use process, which is where we are right now, the Planning Commission could recommend approval subject to the variance that the applicant acknowledges that they need in order to establish compliance with the conditional use criteria. Let me also add, Dick, that we are going to be requesting, because of the need to get this variance, that the applicant grant an extension, assuming the Planning Commission does move forward with a conditional approval tonight. We are on a timeline, I think, to hold the conditional use hearing at the March council meeting. I think I spoke with Mr. McKee again. I think his client, the applicant, is going to be willing to grant that extension as necessary to obtain the variance.
And that is correct. We are perfectly happy to work with the borough on scheduling that public hearing.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
The Planning Commission is aware that the multi-municipal plan approved by Monroeville, Wilkins Township, and Churchill Borough a few years ago identified the redevelopment of the Schaefer School site as a high priority and actually contemplated it becoming a residential development. And there were drawings included in that, in the comprehensive plan. So to the degree that this is residential, similar, a little bit more density than what was proposed in the single family offering that was in the comprehensive plan, it seems to be consistent, generally consistent with the community's comprehensive plan.
So acknowledged, yes, agreed. I have just a couple of minor comments, if I may. You noted that there will not be any destruction of the buffer trees. In fact, there'll be additional landscaping, and there will be a submittal of a landscaping plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. A question, and this was brought up quickly, but it is a private drive, so to speak, but it will have adequate access for emergency vehicles, ambulance and fire truck. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Churchill currently has a, I believe all of Churchill currently has a no parking on the street ordinance overnight. Would that be applicable here?
Correct.
Okay. And you're not anticipating any regrading or major regrading of the site. So sight lines will essentially be the same. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Anybody else on the planning commission have questions?
I have one.
Please.
I noticed that you've kept the sidewalk that extends up from the dead end of Stevendale. That's been there a long time. I don't know if it's within a right of way for sanitary or something like that. And I was just curious if it's a public development, but will neighbors be able to walk up and around and enjoy the green space behind the community center and back down? And will you be maintaining that part that's off the property?
I do believe that is an easement that takes you down to the street, and it is our intention to leave that open. That is the entire walk path, so that neighbors could enjoy a walk close to the woods. We want to keep that. I was hoping we could even extend that a little bit, so we'll go as far as we can with the trail, as close to the woods as we can at the edge of the property. So yes, neighbors could enjoy that, access to that.
That would be nice. It's a very nice development. Thanks for all your thoughts.
Thank you.
Why does this not have direct access to a collector street? I mean, it looks to me like it does.
The definition of collector street, although the collector street is not defined in the zoning code, Mr. Kelly, there are specifications in the subdivision ordinance that set forth the width, the paving width, the right of way width, et cetera. And Garden Terrace does not meet those requirements. It's probably the size down. I think probably minor in our subdivision is the next size down of road. So that was what Mr. McKeegan and I discussed, and really couldn't come to any other conclusion. I can let him amplify that if I misstated that interpretation.
No, Mr. Kelly, we did consider the point you were trying to make, which is that you can go straight down Garden Terrace to Greensburg Pike. It's I scaled it off on Google Earth. I think it's about a quarter of a mile. So it sounds like it's direct, but we were concerned with the definitions in the subdivision and land development ordinance, getting tripped up on those. And we just felt from a approval process to make sure that we dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, rather than having an interpretation that is strained out there, that we go to the body that's supposed to make those rulings and have it done right. So we tried, but we ended up agreeing with Gavin that that question needs to go to the zoning hearing board.
Just out of curiosity, if the PHFA financing and the county financing don't come through, Is this project not going forward?
We would probably take another try at it next year, just delays everything 1 year. So instead of 2 years, we were 3 years away. We would consider doing it twice and then probably would drop it.
Thank you.
Anybody else on planning commission have any questions? Staff or engineers? Okay. We'll move on to the public comments section of tonight's meeting. Thank you guys all for being so patient. Again, let me reiterate, we're going to keep comments to 3 minutes per taxpayer. When you want to speak, please raise your hand on the Zoom. You will get your turn as you raise your hand. Please state your full name and your street address. And as you come to the 3 minutes, you'll be warned, and then our technical advisor will probably cut you off after that. So feel free to raise your hand, and Alex will start letting you in. Just announce yourself and your name, your address, and then your comment, please.
Well, the first hand that went up, Madam Chair, is our mayor, Paul Gamrat.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Paul Gamrat, 209 Thornberry Drive. My comment, I'll start backwards with Trek. I did like the presentation. I'm looking forward to that development. The questions that raised my mind were there would be no grading of that level. I know the property flows out and then drops down. So the housing would also drop down as well? Okay, that's my question. The second one,
Yeah.
would there be any change in the traffic flow? I know it's a one-way street. That would remain the same as well?
That would remain the same.
Okay, good.
And there would be no grading on the hillsides.
So the housing would drop down. That was the only questions I had. I don't know, are we combining the Hillwood with this as well, or how do you want to work that?
Yes, Mayor. Again, and just to be clear, questions that you will ask or any of the commenters will ask this evening may be addressed at some point tonight or at a future meeting, but we don't anticipate a back and forth.
Okay.
So go ahead with your Hillwood comments.
But no, for the Hillwood, I had a slew of questions here, but I have to compliment on the presentation tonight. That really gave us a lot more information that we've been kind of looking for. As really those drawings really helped a lot. I'm still kind of thinking in my mind, do we see a whole little model that you can look at to see, give you a better picture of what the thing will look like? But we can deal with that later. And all the questions I wrote down were kind of answered through the presentation. One thing that comes to mind was the bus stop that's located up on Old William Penn Highway in Beulah and the park and ride lot. Has that been any consideration about how that will flow with people who park there and catch that bus with the new traffic pattern? That's pretty much all I had.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Tom Bareilles, please, if you can speak and unmute yourself.
Sure. Tom Bareilles, 1634 James Place. Talking about the Westinghouse site. First question, well, not question, but comment is on traffic. I'm glad to see the roundabout is not there, but I'm still concerned with what I see. We keep referring to the fact that there's no more vehicles than Westinghouse had. I have to remind everybody that there were not any 18-wheelers at Westinghouse at that time. That light at Beulah and the highway is a disaster now. A lot of thought and process will have to go into how it is regulated for traffic. The other item I have is related to the landscape. Your comment of just using quote saplings, I think needs to be further defined. If you're talking about saplings, you better revise your sketch for 5 years because that's what you're going to get after 5 years. I would hope that the borough's ordinances might ask that these trees be more than just saplings. And then the other question I have, or the other comment I have, is related to the landscape plan. I think it would be nice to get some evergreens in there as well. I'm assuming that there'll be a formal landscape plan submitted for review. At this point, the last thing would be the building. I would like for you to strive for the lead idea. Even though you don't make it, this is a chance of getting a facility that would have more than just what I call a cookie cutter building, where we would have some solar energy. And also with the stormwater program, is it possible to use some of that stored water for on-site watering and irrigation and cleaning? This would help reduce that water and also put it to a better use. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Sampson, if you could please unmute yourself and state your address as well, your full name.
I'm Mark Sampson. My address is 2417 Greensburg Pike. So I'm probably one of the more heavily impacted pieces of private property with the amount of traffic and bordering this proposed site. I do thank the commission for their work and the staff of the borough as well. Several comments or questions to look at. Sound wall originally proposed was 10 feet. It seems to be higher now, but most of us on this side of Greensburg Pike still sit a good bit above that. So I'd be interested in knowing more about how that will dampen sound. For instance, now there's movie work taking place on a regular basis at the site. And at night and early morning, there's a fair amount of light and sound that travels up right now, and that's with a relatively few amount of vehicles. I do have a question about the grade of the off-ramp coming off the west side and the possibility of engine braking from trucks and things like that exiting the interstate. That again will add to sound pollution for residents in the area. As to traffic on Greensburg Pike, the original 600-page plus traffic study really wasn't clear as to how many vehicles would be particularly on the Greensburg Pike exit and then driving across Greensburg Pike itself. There was some comments this evening about on-street parking, and actually on weekends and holidays, I know a lot of my neighbors have parties, and so people do park on Greensburg Pike fairly often. Also during the day, Amazon, UPS, food deliveries frequently stop in that stretch. So there are vehicles that are stopping where some of these traffic control lanes are put. I like the overly optimistic views of the site with all the sunny skies. This is Pittsburgh. We don't really get that often, but it's helpful to understand what you're thinking. I speak against the project. I understand the developer's listing of increase of property values and things like that. Similar projects that they've listed, I don't think are apples and apples with the Churchill project here. So I question some of that. And frankly, this negatively impacts my property pretty significantly. So I speak against it.
Thank you, Mark. Susan Starrett, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself and full name and address, please.
My name is Susan G. Starrett, and I'm at 1903 Hampstead Drive. I thank Hillwood for answering a lot of questions. However, there's one question I put in writing and orally that did not get answered. So I'd like to first start off with that. In a letter that I wrote that I think got sent both to the Borough Council Planning Commission and the Borough Council. I asked a question about drones, but it wasn't the one that Hillwood answered. I said, whereas only small drones are expected for last mile deliveries, larger air vehicles that can take off from parking lots and rooftops will be used to move goods between distribution centers. Now, what I mean by that is that I was looking at the press releases that Hillwood itself has released about their plans for 21st century distribution centers. They say that they will integrate ground vehicles and air vehicles, specifically vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that can take off and land on a distribution center's roof and parking lot areas. That's the plan. That's what they're testing in Texas. So I would appreciate, so I just note that question was not answered. And I believe that that could have a significant effect on the noise report. And therefore I asked the Planning Commission and the Borough Council to think about that. The second thing is I also noticed that the traffic study, I didn't see that it included the Greensburg Pike. So the third thing is I appreciate the answer about the electrical supply. That it's going to be underground. There's still a question of to do that digging and installation. What are you going to have to do? I guess we'll get those answers later. And then the fourth question I have is really for the council. Is it appropriate to ask that here, or did you only want questions for Hillwood tonight?
You have the floor.
Okay. So what I wanted to ask was, I know that when we were talking about approving the amendment that Hillwood authored and asked for the borough to approve, I remember that the borough solicitor said that, and well, I'm actually reading from the notes, that in addition to having the applicant satisfy the specific criteria, council can place additional reasonable conditions on the development to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So I kind of wanted to ask about that. What exactly, what is the council able to do? Because then it seemed later there was sort of the sentiment that as long as it meets code requirements, we have to approve it. And so I sort of wanted some clarification on that. I believe, as someone who teaches engineering ethics, I believe that it's probably accurate what the borough solicitor said at first, that the council can place additional reasonable conditions on the development to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So that's why I bring up the issue about the noise. And there's many other issues that could fit under that. And I think the most important one is the air quality near the school. That's a school that's trying to come out from under being a problem school. The last thing you want to do is add a burden of poor air quality to what the students are facing.
Hey, Susan, the time is up for 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, others can send emails or written comments to the borough as well. Next up is Ken Balke. Ken, would you unmute yourself and please full name and address?
Okay, thank you. My name's Ken Balke. I'm actually Susan's neighbor a little further down on 2007 Hampstead Drive. And I chair the tree committee for the borough. Like everyone else, I'd like to thank Hillwood for their changes they've made to their design and to all the effort everyone's putting into this. Back on January 13th, we were given the opportunity to walk the Westinghouse site. I worked there twice when it was in its heyday. And when I walked through the site, I was really distressed at how seriously deteriorated the buildings are on the site. So this development is actually a big improvement over what exists there now. But while I was there, Barry Kisloff joined me and we did a tree count. And we counted approximately 100 trees. These are big trees that are 70 years old, major girth, big absorbers of water, air, and so forth. They're going to be removed there. And then we got an estimate of what the west side would look like. But the biggest concern was I climbed down. Actually, the photo that was shown in rendering 4, I actually was up on that bluff and walked as far as I could to get a tree count on that hillside. And I was able to count one stand of trees that had 50 trees in it. These are big trees that were so close together. And then I estimated how many more stands were like that on the hill. Now, we overlaid the hill with the original Hillwood design on the plants. I had some idea, and I did do some measurements to how far you'd be coming down. But I've estimated the Hillwood, even with your new change, you're still going to remove about 300 to 500 trees on that hillside just for the building. And then the driveway takes another 200 to 300 trees out. And so by the time it all gathered up, it's 600 to 1,000 trees. And these are not little trees. These are full mature trees. And I really want to address the comment that was made. I wrote a report on this with drawings and data, and I put an actual table together on how the estimate was made with possible impacts. And I believe it was provided to the Planning Commission. I really appreciate looking at, because the aspect of a new sapling versus a mature 70-year-old tree being reed, that is not equal. In fact, that's discussed as being the developer's myth. And when I've talked to other experts around the Commonwealth here, it really takes about 30 new trees, of not saplings, but 30 fairly sizable trees to match one big tree that you're removing off a site. So I really would like folks to look at that report who are involved in the decision. And I express very serious concern from the aesthetics aspect of the loss of the trees on that eastern side. The drawing of rendering 4, I appreciate you doing it. It doesn't even come close to addressing the view from Beulah Road and what it would look like with the 50-foot retaining wall and the sound, and with all those trees being lost. But I do appreciate everybody's effort, and I do appreciate Hillwood intending to plant the 750 trees in other places on the property itself. And I do agree with the comment, we should really be requesting larger trees, not saplings. The deer will eat them by themselves. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate that. The next up is the individual Scanga, S-C-A-N-G-A. I'm sorry, I don't know what your full name is. So go ahead and state your full name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Joanne Scanga, and I live at 30 Churchill Road. And I wanted to make a comment. While I applaud Hillwood for reducing the footprint from 830,000 feet to 630,000, it's still not enough. I don't think that the residents of Churchill need or want a big truck stop in their backyards. So, and you're going from 69 bays to 49 bays. Well, that's still not enough, and I think we deserve better. I would implore the council to do a site visit to the closest Hillwood facility that has a structure of this size and magnitude. And is it in a residential area? From whatever I've read on the reports or the literature that you've distributed, that none of your facilities are in a residential area. This would be the first one, if I'm not mistaken. And to have a project of this size and magnitude in our backyard is actually totally not acceptable to me and a lot of the other residents. So I would like council, if they could, and any others who would want to join them, to do a site visit and look at it at 10 a.m., at 3 a.m. Look at the lights, look at the brightness, look at which I noticed they weren't mentioning at all either, the lights. I look at the Westinghouse Center from my backyard, and it's acceptable as it is now, but the structure they're proposing, I think that we could do a much better job. And while I watched the little Hot Wheels presentation with the traffic, I didn't see anywhere where there were 18-wheelers in that diagram. So I really think that there should be more, mention of the traffic. There should be more studies done on it. And it's going to be a cluster mess. And to think that it's going to be anything other than that, you're fooling yourselves. So I am not for it. I know there are a lot of members in our community who are not for it at this point and this size. If it were reduced more, possibly. I also think that it's been very quiet in terms of how this project has been progressing, and that we as residents deserve something more, and we should have newsletters or something that has been sent out to all the members, and more input should be required, as well as a town hall meeting.
Thank you for those comments. Next up is Elizabeth, please, if you may state your full name and address. Thank you.
Elizabeth Casman. I'm at 8 Holland Road. And I just have two questions. I agree with many of the previous speakers, but I'm not going to talk about those issues. I was wondering in the transportation plan, what has been done for pedestrians trying to walk along the property, Beulah Road, say to Penn Avenue, if that's part of the transportation plan. And the other question I had is, once Amazon, assuming this thing is built and Amazon occupies it, what's to keep them from upgrading it and enlarging the facility?
Right.
Those are my only questions.
Thank you. Next is Kathy. If you can unmute yourself and say your full name and address, please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kathy Bordner, and I live at 1926 Hampstead Drive. And my comments, I agree with the previous comments. The issues, Joanne brought up several issues that I was going to address, so I won't. And I'm also concerned about the huge loss of the trees. My other comments are, I don't know why you don't make a walking path around the entire perimeter of the site. The people who are doing the housing for the senior citizens have a wonderful walking path throughout that site. I don't see why Hillwood and Amazon would not agree to do that and allow Church Hill residents to use that walking path around the entire south site and their employees, because I know how much Amazon cares about their employees. My home overlooks the intersection of Beulah Road and Lewin Drive, and for every accident that happens, there are probably multiple near misses. That's a dangerous intersection. It's going to be more congested with this development going in. And so I think that that needs to be added to the mix of things that intersections that will have to be improved. I agree with Joanne that we need to see an example of an Amazon site that is in the middle of a residential area. Also, it looks like the vehicles can exit I-3, the expressway to the site, but am I correct that any vehicle that leaves the site and wants to get on the expressway will have to get on Beulah or Greensburg Pike? That's a question I have to be answered. Also, if this facility is in the middle of the supply chain, and so you're not going to have drivers who are delivering packages directly to customers, does that mean that there will not be lines of people, drivers, waiting for packages to deliver? That's a big concern I've read that about other Amazon sites. And also, I agree that the thing where you had the traffic and you showed it the way it is now and the way it will be, again, like Joanne pointed out, that does not take into consideration the increased amount of traffic. And I think that needs to be redone so that we can see that. I think that's all the issues I have. I oppose this, and I recommend that we get that the borough put together a citizen task force to look at other opportunities for redeveloping that site. I think you'll have a lot of people willing to volunteer to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Right now, I see one individual with their hand up, and that's JMP. Before you unmute and speak, I want to make sure other people in the room know, if you want to speak, at the bottom of your Zoom or somewhere along the screen, there's an opportunity for you to raise your hand, and that's what you'll need to do to be able to speak. JMP, would you please unmute and introduce yourself, including your full address, please?
Yes, my name is Jean Pellegrini. I'm the daughter of Jane and Bud Pellegrini, 461 Woodland Hills Drive. I'm speaking on their behalf. I have a total agreement with comments of Joanne, Kathy, Ken, And the engineer that spoke, I'm sorry, I'm getting names mixed up, but I feel that we should hear all of her observations, as she is a professional and she's raised some really critical issues. So I'm asking if you would extend her time and allow her to finish her comments so that we can all have the benefit of hearing them. I would be more than willing to concede some of my time to allow her to do that if you're willing to do that. I have two questions on the Amazon site in addition. The health and safety comment that was made. I believe that there are major issues related to that besides what was already discussed. There are other facilities in the Pittsburgh area where I've heard the drivers just leave, bottles of urine and so forth because they're under such tight guidelines as to what they have to do in delivery turnaround. So I hope that those kinds of things will be addressed for Churchill by Hillwood, and what plan of action there is to enforce that kind of residue is not left on the streets and in the area. Second thing is, I agree too that there needs to be more communication about this project with the whole community, especially with older residents who do not use online communications. There needs to be things mailed. They have to have a chance to have genuine input. Otherwise, I believe you're being biased, because the community is aged, as you know, and there definitely needs to be a chance for those people to hear this and have their input given. As far as the other project, Schaefer School, one thing that I wanted to add on that is there are many people cut from Greensburg Pike through to Thornberry Drive and then down to Beulah Road. What's the impact of the traffic of this development in that sense? Has that been considered? Thank you.
Thank you. Murray, if you would please unmute yourself and go ahead and give us your full name and address. Murray, the floor is yours. So go ahead and unmute yourself. It says here that you are able to speak, so go ahead. Okay, while Murray figures out his technical difficulties, Abe, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead and introduce yourself and give us your complete address. Thank you.
My name's Abe Crowley. I live at 3 Lear Drive. And I had a question. I did notice during the quote unquote Hot Wheels demonstration, the traffic flow simulation, that there were in fact 18-wheelers. However, I did notice that a lot of the 18-wheelers were continuing straight across the Beulah onto Churchill Road, and then I'm guessing that they were going to attempt to make that left-hand entrance ramp onto the Parkway. I had a question, which would be one of, are they going to give a required exit strategy for 18-wheelers leaving the site? I have a commercial driver's license. I've driven large vehicles before, and I'm an engineer. So I would never leave the site onto Greensburg Pike in an 18-wheeler. One direction, you go down a goat trail with switchbacks. In the other direction, you have to make an incredibly sharp turn to get back onto 376 going into town. The other way would be to exit the site on the Beulah side, and that way you would have to make a left-hand turn and go underneath the Parkway and then use the entrance ramp onto the Parkway there. I think that's the only logical way to get onto the Parkway. I do not think it's logical to expect these trucks to go onto Churchill Road and make that crazy entrance ramp there. So that's pretty much all my time, all I had to say.
Thank you, Abe.
Yeah.
Murray, why don't we give it another try, please? So I'm not sure what's going on with Murray's technical side. For those of you who are interested in Murray's comments, go to churchillfuture.com and you will find his comments eloquently shared there via the web. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll hand this portion over to you. I don't see any other individuals with their hands up to make comment or ask questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for your comments and your questions. We'll take them under consideration. As Alex had said before, you know, there is a website out there, churchillfuture.com, to look at some of the comments that have been raised. We do appreciate, you know, your input and taking it into consideration. At this time, we're going to move on to the agenda, which is the action items. The first one being the consideration of the conditional use application filed by Churchill Creek Project LLC. We need a motion to either approve, table, or deny the conditional use application. Members of the Planning Commission, do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we table it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is that you, Mike?
That's Mike.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, it is tabled. Consideration of the land development application filed by Churchill Creek Project LLC. We have either a motion to recommend approval, table, or the denial of the land development application. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to table that one too.
All right, thank you, Richard. Do I have a second?
I'll second that as well. This is Mike Moida.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so those two are tabled. Thank you very much for your presentation, Churchill Creek. Next is the consideration of the conditional use application filed by Trek Development Group for the Churchill Senior Community Center, or community, I guess, and the center. We can have a motion to approve, table, or denial of the conditional use application. Do I have a motion for any of the above?
Madam Chair, before a motion's made, if I could suggest, I'm not sure if Planning Commission is inclined to recommend approval, but if they are, I would just remind the commissioners that a recommended approval should be conditioned upon the applicant obtaining a variance from the requirement in the zoning code that the development directly access a collector street or a principal thoroughfare.
So noted, thank you.
Sure.
I'll make a motion, we approve the conditional use application subject to them getting the variance from the requirement that property access a collector street or principal thoroughfare.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that as well. Mike Moida here.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All in favor of the approval subject to the variance as well? All in
Aye.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, is that, that's for, did Dennis vote? Well, we have three, so approved.
I believe Dan did vote. Dan.
Dan.
Yes. Sorry. I did. Sorry, I'm looking at Dennis and saying Dan. Sorry. The downside of Zoom. All right, so that motion has passed. Thank you very much, Trek Development. Good luck in getting the project underway.
Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate it very much.
Okay, so the next steps, I'm presuming that we will get resubmittals from Churchill Creek project on the Churchill Creek project. And then we will reconvene. The next meeting is a month from tonight. Gavin, do you have any final parting comments on procedure or process?
No, I don't think so. You know, like we said, the applicant for the Schaefer School redevelopment will need to file an application to seek a variance in front of the zoning hearing board. And then ultimately that once, depending on the timing of that, we'll schedule a public hearing on that conditional use application before Borough Council. And as you stated, Ms. Harmon, we will come back again to talk about the Churchill Creek project application. Then we'll see where that stands after next month's meeting. If it's in position to be moved forward, and then we could schedule the public hearing before council for April. If not, you know, there's always the option to continue until whatever remaining issues are ironed out.
Madam Chair, if I could just make a comment, as far as communication goes, really do appreciate the citizens who participated throughout the process, quite frankly, from the C1 visioning last spring in 2020 through the meetings of the summer and the fall through Zoom. We take those to heart. There's a lot of things online. We're trying to use social media. I would like people to respond to first SwiftReach. And many of you got text today that this meeting was taking place. We will be doing a newsletter shortly, and featured in that newsletter will be information about these projects. But I think it's really word of mouth and neighbor to neighbor that's one of the best ways to let people know what's going on. I commend council and the Planning Commission for certainly all of your work, but we're doing our best to try to make this as public as you possibly can. And certainly even the public has created their own websites and Nextdoor app information and user groups and so forth. So really appreciate the people who came here tonight and look forward to more people within the community being involved.
Yes, and by the same token, we want to thank everybody. We know that Zoom is not often the best way to communicate, but given the situation that we are all in, it's hard to hold a public hearing or a public meeting any other way. We're trying the best that we can. When things open up, we will open up, certainly have in-person meetings. But at this time, Churchill does not have the facilities to accommodate this group. So thank you very much. With that, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Everybody, thank you very much. Daniel, thank you very much for coming on board under fire. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
See you, Alex.
We'll see you, Dennis. Have a good night.